ocean is our last frontier, our destiny. We all come from the ocean and we're going at the end to the ocean after we die. It's our last adventure, our last opportunity, but also our last big, big responsibility.
The need for knowledge and the need for ongoing continuous dialogue between science and policy. Whatever policy measures are put in place will need to be put in place quickly and at scale. And some of these policy measures might need to be corrected, might prove to be not as good as we thought. And therefore that continuous knowledge policy dialogue is absolutely critical if we are to rescue ecosystems, if we are to understand how they're changing, and if we are to regulate and calibrate ocean-based industries in the right way. We need to manage and govern oceans across sectors. Today, in too many countries around the world, and in too many ocean territories, ocean industries are left through their own devices. They might be regulated by a sector ministry or a sector authority. But if industries go forward sector by sector, there's no way we're going to be able to secure the health of the ocean.
So I'd like to show you what happens in an area, typically overfished area like this one in Cabo Pulmo in Mexico, where in the mid-90s, the local fishermen were so upset not having enough fish to catch that they decided to close an area of only 70 square kilometers to fishing. So the Mexican government created a national park. So when we returned 10 years later to conduct our surveys, this is what we found. This is the same place before and after protection. We saw it come back to pristine in only 10 years, including the return of the large predators like this grouper or sharks or these jacks. And the beauty of this is that the community, those former fishermen, are now making far more money from diving tourism inside the reserve. And because these fish not only grow larger, but they reproduce more, the communities around the reserve are catching more fish. So it's a win-win. And this is just one more example showing that areas that are partially protected that allow commercial activities are a red herring. They provide an illusion of protection, an illusion of regeneration, but they have no social or economic benefits that are different from areas that are unprotected.
So I think, to me, the pertinent but perhaps provocative question to pose here is whether food is actually the key to survival for everyone. And globally, aquatic foods contribute 17% of animal protein consumed, but this figure is well over 50% in some countries. And I think those numbers are really interesting and informative in that they tell us that the role that blue foods are likely to play for human well-being is going to vary hugely across countries and cultural contexts. And on the one hand, aquatic foods hold the potential to really address undernourishment in many poor and marginalized communities, particularly coastal communities. But in well-to-do countries, like a country like Sweden, where I'm based, we're already have a fairly unfairly, you could say, large consumption footprint. And maybe seafood for us is more a means to wean our societies off overconsumption of terrestrial meat. It's a stepping stone towards healthier and more sustainable ways of eating. But it may not be a desirable end point. And I say this because I think it's important that we don't land in the uncritical, erroneous conclusion that everyone should be aiming to eat more aquatic foods necessarily. And what we do not want is, aquatic foods to just add to an already kind of overfull plate for some of us.
As an economist, my big reason for fighting so hard to sustain our ocean is because a declining ocean has serious consequences on human beings, on people. The ocean economy is a cornerstone of the global economy, contributing trillions each year The OECD estimates about 3 trillion in the next few years. That will be the contribution. That is a lot. Despite this, the sector is drastically underinvested. We could only find about 1% of the ocean economy's total value. In fact, less than 1% of the total ocean invested in sustainable projects to date of the ocean. Can you imagine that? Less than 1% of what is produced. This is gross underinvestment, right? Meanwhile, we have all these stresses: climate change, pollution, overfishing, what have you, ocean acidification, deoxygenation. You can list a ton of things happening. So we need to do something, but to do this effectively and achieve sustainable ocean economy, significantly greater finance needs to be made available.
So what should you know about Homo sapiens? In a slide, there's a lot to talk about. But the first point to make is that we are subject to finite attention and processing capacity. We're boundedly rational. Yes, we are rational, but we are boundedly rational. It's really important to realize that a goal only plays a role when it's active in a situation. And of course, that is a recipe also for intervention. How to prime sustainability goals, for example, by the physical, social, or cultural context in which these decisions are getting made. An important point that actually won the Nobel Prize in Economic Sciences in 2002 is the insight that outcomes are evaluated in a relative fashion. How good is $10,000? Well, compared to what? Compared to nothing, it's great. Compared to $1 million, it's not very much. And so we can actually sort of reshape people's experience of outcomes by shifting their reference points. Also, Homo sapiens learns best by trial and error, by getting hurt. Seeing is believing. Seeing the negative consequences of something convinces people that the action was bad. Positive consequences encourages behavior. But at the same time, also we are tribal creatures. We're committed to our convictions and to our group convictions. So oftentimes believing also is seeing. So we might actually attend to causes that are contrary to our political ideology. And then the last point to make is that we make decisions in multiple ways. Yes, we oftentimes are analytic, we make calculation-based decisions, but older ways of processing that are automatic to all of us are making decisions based on emotions, on both positive and negative emotions. If it's good, we approach. If it's scary, we back off. Or on our social identities, on our roles that oftentimes come with rules of conduct, whether those are standard operating procedures in a company context, or moral rules of conduct that are part of our identity.